Tonight's big story, a disqualification case has now been lodged against presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos Jr. Isang bayan convener, retired Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, and other members of the opposition filed the petition before the Commission on Elections.
They stuck with moral turpitude as grounds for disqualification after Marcos was convicted for tax evasion back in 1995. But does failure to file taxes constitute moral turpitude? The poll body has its doubts. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Marcos Jr. is about to face the first hurdle in his ambition to become president. A petition to disqualify him has now been filed before the Commission on Elections.
His tax evasion case has been used by the opposition as basis to block a possible run by Marcos. But is the poll body seeing a case here? Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the big story.
It is going to be a tough race to Malacanang for Bongbong Marcos. Retired Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio confirmed to One News that he filed a petition with the Commission on Elections for the disqualification of presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos Jr. The petition cited Section 12 of the Omnibus Election Code. It states that a candidate who has been convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude shall be perpetually disqualified from being a candidate and holding any office. The petitioners refer to Marcos Jr.'s 1995 tax evasion case for failing to file and pay tax returns from 1982 to 1985 while he was governor of Ilocos Norte. Marcos Jr. was sentenced by Quezon City Regional Trial Court Branch 105 to 7 years in prison and fines. In 1997, the Court of Appeals acquitted Marcos Jr. for violating Section 50 but affirmed his conviction for violating Section 45. Marcos was ordered to pay several thousand pesos in fines, but the prison sentence was removed by the CA. In an interview with the Chiefs last Friday, Carpio said Marcos's failure to file his tax returns for 4 consecutive years qualifies for moral turpitude.
4 or 5 years of failure, does that constitute an intent to evade payment of the tax? Nasa kanila na yon. But for me, pag isa lang, I would say you cannot deduce anything there na there's an intent.
But Comelec spokesperson James Jimenez thinks otherwise.
Under the law, a conviction has to be for a crime involving moral turpitude or for an offense with and the sentence is a penalty of 18 months, at least 18 months. He doesn't meet these criteria. Right now, there is no clear case for disqualification.
With the petition now filed with the Comelec, the Commission will have to weigh in with a vote, although the matter may also be elevated later to the Supreme Court. One News spoke with Attorney Vic Rodriguez of the Marcos camp, and he said they will verify the petition before making any comment. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
Can the tax evasion case against Marcos be considered moral turpitude? Let's get insights and legal perspective from election lawyer Attorney Buko de la Cruz. Good evening, Attorney de la Cruz. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Robbie, and to your viewers.
Sir, how do you interpret moral turpitude, and do we have legal precedent linking tax evasion? In this case, as Justice Carpio insists, hindi lang 1 year, paulit-ulit for 4 or 5 straight years as it pertains to tax evasion. Is there precedent for that, or is this still legal theory at this point?
We have a precedence but not for tax evasion. One is for libel. Merong isang publisher ng newspaper who happens to be a congressman na na-convict ng libel. Hindi siya nakulong dahil ang penalty na ipinataw ay fine. Parang yung kay Senator Bongbong, nagbayad lang siya ng multa. But there was that conviction, and when he filed his certificate of candidacy, a petition for disqualification was also filed against this congressman, and the Supreme Court said that the offense, although there was no imprisonment, but since there was a conviction and he was made to pay a fine, the Supreme Court said that this constitutes moral turpitude because it is a transgression of law. So kung yun ang standard na gagamitin natin, yung transgression of law na merong deliberate intent, magko-qualify yung tax evasion. Doon nga sa libel yung congressman na yon na Roby, publisher lang. Hindi siya yung sumulat, no? Pero sinabi ng Supreme Court na he is disqualified to run because he was convicted of libel kahit na hindi nakulong.
What Justice Carpio was also saying is that this is hinging on moral turpitude because wala yung prison sentence. No? Wala yung 18 months na binanggit ni Comelec spokesperson James Jimenez. Now, because wala yung prison term na yon, they're now hinging it on moral turpitude, and the moral turpitude angle here now hinges in turn on the fact that this was a repeat evasion case. It was not just isang beses na pwede mo sabihin nakalimutan. Do you agree with that? That the repeating nature of failing to pay taxes actually changes the nature of tax evasion?
That's correct, no? Yung offense kasi na tax evasion is a serious offense, no? At yung pagpaulit-ulit na paggawa nito for several years constitutes moral turpitude. No? Malinaw sa akin yung interpretation ng Supreme Court ng moral turpitude na kinakailangan kasi merong active involvement, may will, may deliberate, may intent. No? So dito yung evasion ay clear kasi paulit-ulit. Pero Roby, meron pang hindi na napansin yata na pwedeng ma-file kay Senator Bongbong kasi merong question doon sa certificate of candidacy. May nakalagay doon, have you been convicted of an offense? No? Yung question na yon, pagka hindi ka sumagot ng tama, that is a material misrepresentation. So that is a ground for cancellation of the certificate of candidacy. And this is separate and distinct from disqualification. Sa disqualification kasi pwede ka pang ma-substitute. Pero dun sa cancellation ng certificate of candidacy, walang substitution yon. You were never a candidate.
Okay, I mean, just a quick question there. You can't just say that that was a mistake. I was filling up the forms. I didn't completely understand it. And isang check lang naman yun eh. I mean, how big or how small is that problem?
Marami nang ganyang naging depensa, no, na nagkamali sila kasi dalawa pipiliin mo ron yes or no eh. So pagka nag-no ka pero meron ka palang conviction, hindi kasi kapani-paniwala, no, na hindi mo alam dahil ikaw yung na-convict. So if you made a material misrepresentation, you lied, and that is under oath, no? You lied under oath. The penalty is that the certificate of candidacy can be cancelled. And it means you were never a candidate. You cannot be substituted.
Okay, election lawyer Attorney Buko de la Cruz. Maraming salamat po, Attorney. But what actually constitutes moral turpitude? The Omnibus Election Code identifies 4 grounds for disqualification. First, insanity or incompetence. Second, subversion, insurrection, or rebellion. Third, a sentence to more than 18 months penalty. And lastly, involvement in crimes of moral turpitude. According to Black's Law Dictionary, crimes involving moral turpitude are acts of baseness, vileness, or depravity and conduct contrary to justice, honesty, modesty, or good morals. Crimes which may be considered as such include concubinage, illicit relations, rape, smuggling, estafa, bribery, murder, theft, and falsification of documents. The question is, does tax evasion fall as moral turpitude? Based on a 1977 case, Zari versus Flores, the Supreme Court cited evasion of income tax as a crime involving moral turpitude. As for the case of Marcos, it remains to be seen as to how the Comelec or even the Supreme Court will decide.
These are the other big stories tonight. The series of oil price hikes is now spilling over to food, with pork products seeing a 10 to 20 peso increase per kilo. A call from an unknown number cost a couple 1.7 million pesos. They were unknowingly preyed upon in what is now known as the SIM swap scam. And Netflix pulled out episodes of political drama Pine Gap after it featured China's 9-dash line. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. As expected, the prices of food products, pork specifically, have shot up following the series of oil price hikes.
But according to the Agriculture Department, fuel prices alone are not enough to drive prices up. Shiloh Francisco explains.
Catherine was surprised to see that pork prices in Commonwealth Market are now higher compared last week. Pork prices are up by 20 pesos. She was planning to buy 2 kilos of pork giniling for her child's birthday, but she ended up buying just a kilo.
Nagdating ko dito, mataas. Hindi ko akalain eh. Siyempre mabigat, pagkakasyahin ko yung pera.
Prices of pork increased following gasoline price hikes for 10 straight weeks. Traders now feel its impact on transportation costs. They now have to travel farther to source hogs due to limited supply in Luzon.
Pagka yung mas malayo, mas mataas yung kuha namin. Yung mga tracking na binabayaran, marami. Kaya tapos yung gasolina pa, isa pa sa tumas yan. Kaya nag-adjust kami sa mga customer.
Limited supply is also pushing prices of chicken and fish higher. But the Agriculture Department said fuel prices alone are not enough to drive prices up.
Dahil napakaliit ng contribution ng krudo sa paggalaw ng presyo, kaya pa i-absorb. Pero ang problema is the farm gate talaga. Malaki po ang ginalaw.
The agency noted price hikes in piglets and agricultural inputs such as feeds. The Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura, however, pointed out that even feeds are affected by fuel price hikes as it makes use of corn and rice husks.
Yung fuel kasi, ginagamit yan sa traktora, harvesting, and water pump para dun sa rice field or sa corn field.
The DA is now studying imposing suggested retail prices for agricultural inputs. They are looking at providing subsidies like feeds and biologics for hog and poultry raisers. Negotiations are also ongoing on fuel discounts for fishermen. Shiloh Francisco, we are One News.
While gasoline prices are up for the 10th straight week, liquefied petroleum gas prices saw another hike for the 6th time since June. The Energy Department said it's due to the dwindling LPG supply in the Middle East. And with that, Petron announced an increase of 3 pesos and 10 centavos per kilogram. For auto LPG, spike is at 1 peso and 73 centavos per liter. The average price of a 10-kilo tank is now at over 1,000 pesos. Prices have increased 19 pesos per liter since June. Government is asking the public to try to conserve their LPG use.
In other news, the Environment Department is reviewing dozens of new mining applications. They are also ready to lift the ban on open-pit mining despite stiff opposition from environmental groups. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to the story.
The Department of Environment and Natural Resources is turning to mining for much-needed revenues. Just 7 months after it relaxed a 9-year-old moratorium on new mining contracts, it's been inundated by new applications.
We have identified at least 20 to 30 applications now. It will take, I think, 2 or 3 years more before they can really start operation if they comply now the submission of these documents.
It's also finalizing a draft order that will lift the ban on open-pit mining, which was imposed by the late Secretary Gina Lopez. In her short stint, Lopez shut down at least 23 mines and canceled some 75 contracts for damaging or threatening watersheds. Anti-mining group Alianza Tigil Mina denounced this latest policy reversal.
Binitawan na talaga ng Duterte administration lahat ng pagpapanggap na makakalikasan pa sila. Mas madali, mas marami at mas malawak ang mga minahan na bubuksan at i-approve.
DENR said it's created a new office that will ensure miners adhere to environmental laws and standards. The agency also said they will look into extracting minerals in different ways, not just through open pits, and will make miners pay to rehabilitate the mined areas. But Alianza Tigil Mina says this isn't likely to happen consistently.
At the very best scenario, they can do progressive rehabilitations probably on the 8th to 10th year that they are operating, but definitely not on the first 5 or 7 years.
The Philippines is the largest exporter of nickel ore to China, which uses it to make stainless steel and batteries. In 2020, mining contributed 0.6% to total GDP. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
Netflix pulls out 2 episodes of the political drama Pine Gap upon the request of MTRCB and the Foreign Affairs Department. This is due to a scene involving a map inscribed with China's controversial 9-dash line. Marian Enriquez has a story.
Denver, this is Alice. We have an unannounced 715 missile. Any comms on a possible target?
This is Pine Gap, a Netflix political drama about an Australian-American joint intelligence facility based in the land down under. It was released way back in 2018, but it was only in July when the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board received a complaint from the Foreign Affairs Department.
In Pine Gap's second episode, a map of China's 9-dash line was shown in a scene where there seems to be a show of force between a Malaysian naval warship and 5 Chinese fighter jets near Fiery Cross Reef.
The MTRCB ruled that certain episodes of Pine Gap are unfit for public exhibition. As a result, episodes 2 and 3 have been removed.
The portrayal of the 9-dash line involves foreign policy because it violates the territorial integrity of the Philippines.
But international studies expert Renato De Castro has misgivings about this move.
The action of the government is in a way unconstitutional because of freedom of expression. It doesn't violate our sovereignty. It's just a TV series.
Vietnam has earlier ordered Netflix to remove the Pine Gap series from streaming in their country. Vietnam is among the countries claiming sovereign rights in the disputed West Philippine Sea. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Time for another quick break. When we return, fraudsters managed to take out 1.7 million pesos from a couple through a racket called SIM swap. And with a 6-year drought finally put to an end, TNT Tropang Giga team owner Manny Panghilinan couldn't be more elated. Find out his thoughts on the journey to getting the crown after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Online transactions have become more prevalent during the pandemic, and so have been scams.
Telco company Globe is warning about the so-called SIM swap scam, which had a couple losing some 1.7 million pesos in a matter of hours. Here's the report.
Who knew that answering a call from an unknown number could cost as much as 1.7 million pesos? That was the case for the wife of Oliver Tan, who received a call from an alleged supervisor of a courier firm.
She was requested to hold her line for a few minutes for him to check the tracking number. When my wife sensed something must be wrong, she actually told the person that, "I'm sorry, it was a mistake."
Oliver tells Agenda, after that call, his wife and daughter lost their Globe mobile signal. She went to the carrier store the following day, only to find out that all calls and messages intended for his wife have now been directed to another device from the time she lost her signal. For precaution, she coordinated with her bank, only to find out the horrible news.
She was shocked when she was told that there were approximately 14 transactions made between 12 midnight to 2 a.m. early morning, totaling to millions of pesos paid to a Binance.
Upon further investigation, it was found out that an imposter requested that Oliver's wife's line be cut right away at the same time that the call occurred. The NBI Cybercrime Division says this was a case of SIM swap.
Nagkaroon tayo ng increase ng SIM swap kasi nga naka-lockdown tayo. Tinatawagan ng Globe yung wife ni Oliver to confirm kung talagang hindi na activated, wala na yung SIM, it's not working. Totoo nga naman, they were not able to get through kasi nga busy. Kausap nung wife ni Oliver yung scammer.
In order to protect oneself against SIM swap, Globe advises users to keep sensitive and personal data to oneself, limit sharing information online, don't share screenshots of bills online, use strong passwords, which has to be changed regularly, Use other ways of authentication, like security keys and biometrics. And, as much as possible, use a password manager for better security.
For the big story in sports, after 6 long years, the TNT Tropang Giga has finally brought home a PBA title to its franchise. And no one else could be more ecstatic than TNT team owner Manny V. Pangilinan. Let's find out his thoughts in this interview. He has been on the roll this year from being behind the Olympic gold to the Gilas wins in FIBA and now bringing home the championship with talk and text in the PBA. We have with us team owner and sports patron Manny Pangilinan. Sir!
Thank you, Gretchen.
How sweet is this win for you? Finally turning things around after 6 years, bringing home the all-Filipino title again.
Well, obviously we are all very glad that TNT won it and relieved, no? After more than 2 months of tough games for them. So we're very happy for them. And of course, after a title drought, so to speak, of about 6 years, no? And glad to welcome back Chot. And happy for him that on his return, he was greeted with a championship, no? It was a journey of the team as a whole, and in many ways as well, a journey of each individual. No? If you look at Mikey Williams, he was missing his shots a lot in the beginning. I guess he was getting accustomed to the PBA style and to the Philippines. So it turned out to be a gem. No? And then of course, if you take a look at Kelly and Ryan, they're rejuvenated players. That's the way Ryan played in this conferences was the way he played 10 years ago.
One breakthrough story that we have is the return of Coach Shot Reyes. How did you think of bringing him back to the team, to the helm, even though he hasn't coached in a long time?
He has managed to reinvent himself in terms of the latest trends, I think, in basketball, and I think he himself has changed. Well, he has aged, obviously, in those 6 years, no? Or 9 years. He's a bit more tempered and has become a little philosophical, right? So the old Chot is quite different from the new Chot. So that's another story.
I hear his seminars also.
On the eve of the 5th game, we called him. I told Ricky and I'll join him. I'd like to talk to Chot because I said, we have agreed already on the bonus for the team. Would you like us to tell you and or the team, no? I said, no, please don't. We want to focus on the game and so forth. Okay.
Nice.
We respect that.
What do you think is with his system that makes him a certified, all Filipino conference winner?
I think his ability to communicate to Filipinos, his ability to learn, and his ability to create the chemistry with the team.
Your message for the TNT team?
Rest and relish your victory, which was hard-fought, harder, So then I look forward to hosting dinner for the team and seeing the trophy for the first time for dinner with the team, And we wish you well in the second conference, which is an import conference. And remember, consistency in performance and change. If you need to change, go ahead. Innovate, right? That is the mantra in today's world.
Congratulations ulit sa Tropang Giga.
I loved how Sir Manny talked about the next conference already. Even just after the championship, very competitive,
Yan daw ang hirap sa sports, Di ba kakapanalo mo pa lang, iniisip mo na
Next
yung But we have to
oo.
say, all Filipino.
Oo,
Diba?
nakakabilib talaga. And this was really huge for TNT and Coach Shot. And I also, had a great conversation with Sir Manny. That's just part 1. Tomorrow will be part 2. I asked him about, of course, yung foreign leagues natin and the future of the PBA. So, abangan po ninyo
And
yan.
volleyball.
And volleyball.
Oh.
And Philippine sports, for sure.
diba?
You have a lot of lessons to learn. Catch that tomorrow. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.